FBI Director Christopher Wray was before Congress yesterday singing for his supper, meaning he doesn't want to see the FBI's $12 billion budget cut by congressional Republicans. That would negatively impact their ability to interdict violent criminals and terrorist organizations and police stations that the Chinese Communist Party sets up on American soil and the like.
That's unbelievable.
Well, but who needs the Chinese Communist Party as interlopers, as totalitarian minders, when you have the FBI, the way it operates in so many instances, as we've well documented on this show? One of the groups that's been targeted by FBI and DOJ, although they were just as upset about it as everybody when they learned of this.
Oh, heavens, did they do the, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
Christians and Catholics specifically, like Catholics who would attend the traditional Latin Mass, they're some sort of threat to the Republic to be monitored closely. Merrick Garland was aghast to learn of this news. Well, Catholic Vote and Judicial Watch aren't buying the high dudgeon of Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland. Catholic Vote, joined by Judicial Watch, is now suing the FBI and DOJ for information regarding these agencies' alleged discriminatory targeting of Catholics. They want, documents that should be publicly accessible that detail exactly how this all came about, even though Merrick Garland said he put a quick end to it, whatever emanated out of the FBI's office in, I think it was Richmond, Virginia. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by the president of Catholic Vote, CatholicVote.org. He is Brian Burch. Brian, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Good to be with you.
So give us the four corners of the complaint that you filed against DOJ and FBI.
Well, you're right. We filed this federal lawsuit yesterday against both the FBI and DOJ, but it's helpful to remember again exactly what happened here. In mid-January, an FBI agent inside the Bureau was so disturbed by what is happening that he leaked a memo to the public, and that memo eventually made its way to the media. And what it showed was that the FBI had authorized the surveillance of churchgoers inside of Catholic churches under the guise that somehow Catholics attending Latin Mass, and eventually, as we've now learned, mainline Catholic churches. So this was not some narrow kind of super conservative Catholic inquiry. That Catholics would be inclined to potentially partner with what are called racially motivated violent extremists. Well, I think we all know what this means. And when we talk about the weaponization of the FBI, what we're really talking about is a regime, namely this administration, that has framed any political opponent as a potential domestic threat. We saw it with parents and school boards. We're seeing it with pro-lifers. And we're seeing this escalation on the part of our government where, frankly, potentially because of the exploitation of January 6th for political purposes, you disagree with this administration, you may be an enemy of the state.
And the relief you seek is transparency. Am I right?
That's correct. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act request over a month ago. They have 20 days to respond, and under, quote, unusual circumstances, they can request an additional 10 days. They did trigger that unusual circumstances option and then failed to provide any documents whatsoever. And as you pointed out, the Attorney General said, this is appalling. That was his word. The head of the FBI said he was aghast. They said this was just merely a misunderstanding. It was a rogue agent who went a little too far. Well, if that's the case, then the public deserves to see exactly what led to this, how far it went, and under the Freedom of Information Act, show us exactly the documents and communications involved here.
Oh, well, so what's going to happen to the rogue agent then? I mean, if they know that he made a mistake and he went too far, as they say.
Made a mistake, yeah, right.
Right. Well, the Attorney General said he promised an internal investigation to get to the bottom. Now, keep in mind, Congress is also looking at this. Congressman Jordan has his own committee. He is now subpoenaed the head of the FBI over this. In his own request for documents, he was provided a highly redacted set of documents that even in that highly redacted form showed that this memo was approved by 2 supervisors and then distributed to field offices around the country. So the idea that this was some narrow guy in a cubicle in Richmond who had, a bad day and wanted to rub his, anti-Catholic, sentiment a little, to me seems a little far-fetched, which is exactly why we need to see these documents and get to the bottom of what's going on here.
It also speaks to the assertion that, hey, yeah, we've got a problem at the leadership level. Christopher Wray was talking about this yesterday before congressional committees. We've got to, I changed out the leadership because we're told it's just a leadership problem, but, the rank and file agents are beyond reproach. Well, I'm sure many, if not most, are, dutiful public servants who abide the constitutional restraints on law enforcement. But it does go beyond leadership. There's sort of institutional problems that clearly persist within the FBI that are sort of being papered over by Christopher Wray and, and a lot of congressional Democrats, too, it would seem.
Well, I think this is, perhaps another one of the unintended benefits of the Trump administration. We went through and we saw this weaponization of the FBI and other agencies for the purposes of political ideology. We saw it with Russiagate. We've seen it with the list goes on and on. So, we've been trying to point this out. While some view what we're doing as kind of potentially some narrow thing for Catholics, or is the FBI spying on Catholic churches? It's kind of crazy to think we're even asking that question. But this is really a much bigger question about the ways in which ideology and the politicization of our government is escalating in a way where we now wonder, are these agencies still on our side? Can we trust that the law is being equally applied and they are operating in such a way to protect all of us? As at least I grew up thinking that was what the FBI was supposed to be doing.
Well,
another dichotomy that speaks to this. The SEAL Team 6 raid on the pro-life prayer warrior in rural Pennsylvania, as compared with where are we with FBI investigations and apprehensions and DOJ prosecutions of activists who left their vandals and domestic terrorists who left their calling cards when they firebombed the offices of pro-family groups and pregnancy care centers?
Well, it's a great point, Dan, because once again, as often is the case with left-wing, accusations, what they accuse us of is actually more fitting for themselves. Who are the actual domestic terrorists right now in this country when it comes to overreach and violence and vandalism? It's Antifa, it's pro-abortion extremists, it's anti-Catholic bigots. Over 300 Catholic churches have been vandalized, firebombed, desecrated, statues, decapitated. Hundreds of pro-life centers, of course, since the Dobbs decision have been vandalized. The Department of Justice has prosecuted two incidents over the last 2 years. And meanwhile, they're sending, as you said, SEAL Team 6, FBI agents, 20 armed agents into a home of a father in Pennsylvania who's forced to endure a long trial to exonerate himself lest he spend 10 years behind bars.
Well,
the double standard is outrageous.
How does President Biden, he's Catholic, expect any help from him?
He's a good Catholic.
He's a good Catholic. That's what I said.
Good Catholic.
You have to be the right kind of Catholic. And this is, an internal Catholic question, but it's an important one. And this is where politics and ideology ultimately are trumping and replacing what it means to be a Catholic. And it's something that every Catholic needs to be concerned about because it diminishes the seriousness and the substance of our faith. And for Joe Biden, of course, we've now seen it's a pattern over his entire career. When politics becomes more expedient, the faith is set aside. And frankly, for many Catholics, Joe Biden has become an embarrassment, a hypocrite, and a scandal.
He is Brian Burch. He's the president of Catholic Vote, CatholicVote.org. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. Keep us updated on how that litigation against FBI and DOJ goes. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate being on.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer